healthier lifestyles, it all starts with education. With education, I think we got to start sooner, finish stronger. I have a pre-K initiative in Arkansas today. Less than half of the 4-year-olds are in a pre-K classroom. In fact, the only way to get into a public pre-K classroom in Arkansas is to be at 200% of poverty or below, and even then there are huge waiting lists and huge disparities around the state. If you are fortunate enough to be a parent, it's by giving parents more choices, not less. It's not going to be mandatory, it'll be optional. If you're in Little Rock and you're a parent of a 4-year-old, they've got a desk in a classroom. Lake Hamilton, the 20th largest school district in the state, does not even have a pre-K program. Fayetteville, only 5 of the 9 elementary schools have a pre-K program, and there's a waiting list at each of those. We know that if you go to pre-K, you are less likely to repeat a grade, more likely to finish high school, more likely to go to college, complete college, be employed as an adult, less likely to be on government assistance, less likely to end up in prison. From the time we're born through the 3rd grade, we're learning to read, and from the 4th grade through the rest of our life, we're reading to learn. When we hit the 4th grade, if we're still trying to learn to read, when we begin reading to learn, we fall behind, and too many times we simply don't get caught back up. Look at 100 9th graders in Arkansas today. 20 of them will finish high school. 40 of them will go to college, but only 20 will graduate college. What about the other 80? I think we need a renewed emphasis on what I still call VOTEC, but career and technical training, where we create greater partnerships between K through 12, our community colleges, our technical schools, and existing industries, so that for those who do not want to go to college, that they can learn a skill, learn a trade, get a certification, and get a good paying job. I was recently with the president of American Electric Power. He was telling me in less time than it takes to run for governor, you can become a certified electrical lineman. And by the way, the starting pay is more than the governor makes. I mean, these are good jobs that we're talking about. And so I think we need a renewed effort there while continuing as well to make college within reach for more young people. That's why I have consistently supported increases in Pell Grants and voted to cut student loan interest rates in half. We're 49th in America in terms of adults with a college degree. We can do better. We must do better if we want the good paying jobs to come to Arkansas. Lower fair taxes. What do I mean by that? We have 6 state income tax rates in Arkansas, and yet 60% of the folks are in the top 2 rates. 1 out of every 3 is in the top rate, which means a single mom working 2 jobs to make ends meet, earning $34,000 a year, is paying the same state income tax rate as someone making $340,000 a year or someone making $3.4 million a year. There's nothing fair about it, and as governor, I'm committed to fix it, and I have a plan to fix that as well. Elections have consequences. We've had a rough few years for the Democrats in Arkansas, and I know we got some Democrats in the room and some Republicans in the room, but let me tell you that whether you listen to any of the political scientists anywhere in Arkansas, the Republicans have taken over the State House, the State Senate, the Congressional delegation. Basically, governor's all we have left. And if you are a Democrat, each of those, from Jay Barth to Art English to Hal Bass to Max Brantley to John Drummond, they all predict that if I lose this election, it's the end of the Democratic Party in Arkansas for at least a generation. I believe that. That's why I gave up a really good job to do this, because I feel very strongly about a two-party system. And if we lose, they all predict that what will happen in Arkansas is what happened 15 years ago in the Deep South, where you'll have state reps, state senators, county judges, county clerks, county sheriffs all having press conferences announcing that they've switched parties. Claudel could easily see that happening in Columbia County just for survival. And we can't afford to let that happen. And if you're a Republican, then I hope you'll chew on that and think about it, because I think it's important to have a two-party system. I think it was very important to have Governor Beebe there to provide some balance now that for the first time ever the Republicans have taken over the State House and State Senate. And elections have consequences. I've said that I'm for this minimum wage initiative that's going to be on the ballot. I trust the voters to make that decision. My opponent says he wants the politicians in Little Rock to decide, and he doesn't trust that decision to the voters. The private option, the Medicaid expansion, I have said I would have voted for it, I would have signed it, and as governor, I'll protect it. Let me tell you why. Number one, it is so creative, so innovative, so bipartisan that we had to go to the federal government and get a waiver to be able to implement it. That's how far removed it is from the Affordable Care Act, and I think that's a good way to present it to those that simply don't like the Affordable Care Act, to talk about how different it is. Secondly, and I voted against the Affordable Care Act, and I know I got crossways with some of you in this room when I did that. One of the reasons I did is they cut Medicare reimbursement rates to hospitals. But they said this Medicaid expansion, this private option, will help make them whole again because they're going to start getting paid to treat people they used to treat for free and have to write off. And in these deep southern states that are refusing the Medicaid expansion just because they're mad at President Obama, which makes as much sense as turning, every time we fill up at the gas pump, we pay federal highway taxes. But we're not going to tell Washington that we're going to turn down our federal highway turnback funds just because we're mad at them. And yet that's what they're doing in places like Alabama and Louisiana and Mississippi. And guess what's happening? Because they're not taking those Medicaid expansion funds, the private option. Rural hospitals are closing. And it should be blamed on the Republican legislators and the Republican governors in those states who's blocking the Medicaid expansion from coming to their states. But instead, what do? They blame it on President Obama. That's why the hospitals in the state are so much in support of this Medicaid expansion, this private option. You will literally have hospitals close if the Medicaid expansion, the private option, goes away. It saves the state about $100 million a year because we no longer need all these uncompensated care programs. When you're driving here today, you didn't see diseased, sick people lying in a ditch. It's because we have uncompensated care programs to care for them. We no longer need those programs because of the Medicaid expansion, the private option. It saves the state money. The most the state's ever on the hook is 10%. Just the economics of it, $900 million, $1 billion a year coming into Arkansas. The economic return on that is much more than the 10% that we will ever have to pay in. And then finally, I have some people tell me, well, I'm against it because I don't want my tax money going to people who don't want to work. You know what I tell them? Guess what? They already get it. They're in traditional Medicaid. This Medicaid expansion, this private option, is about trying to provide health care to the people that are trying to do the right thing and stay off welfare. They're working the jobs with no benefits. I gave this speech the other night. And after I got done, one of the waitresses at the event with the catering staff came up to me with tears in her eyes. And she said, "You were talking about me." She said, "I've got a college degree. I work 2 jobs. I have 2 kids at home. And this private option is the first time I've had health insurance since my husband left me." And not that it matters, but it was a white woman. Because too many times it's getting stereotyped that this private option is about African Americans and Latinos, and the opposite is true. Nearly half the people that have signed up have been white women in Northwest Arkansas. And so we've got to get the truth out and set the record straight on all that. But those are the reasons why I feel so strongly about that. So I probably said too much. I'd rather hear from you and answer any questions that you may have. I've got a lot of things I'd like to talk about, but I think they'll probably come up here in questions. Yes, ma'am.
All right, well, I just want to say one question per and try to keep the editorial lines to a minimum. Measuring editorial lines, you ask the questions. Thanks.
My name is Audrey. I heard on the radio that your position on some crimes was that we should not incarcerate, that we should do alternatives. And I agree with that, so I agree with that. It seemed like though in your response to Congressman Hutchinson, who attacked that position, that you backed off on that some. And so could you tell us what your view is on that? And then a second part of that is, what is your view on racial disparities in the criminal justice system, because it's linked to that?
Right. No, I've not backed off at all. I said that I think there are some nonviolent crimes that there's punishment other than doing jail time or prison time that we should consider. And he says, well, Mike Ross wants to, if someone breaks into your house with a gun and points it at you in the middle of the night, he doesn't want to go to prison. Well, of course I'm not saying that. I mean, he's trying to, anyway, don't get me started on that. You see enough of it on TV. Including the ad, he says that he's running solely to stand up to President Obama. Y'all seen that TV ad, I'm sure. I don't quite understand what President Obama has to do with being governor of Arkansas. If he wants to stand up to President Obama, he ought to be running for president, the Senate, or congressman, I think. Here's kind of my take on the criminal justice system. Look, we've got more inmates backed up in county jails than ever in the history of the state. I'd like to stand here and tell you we're not gonna have to build another prison. I think we're probably gonna have to, but if we do, I want meaningful reforms tied to it. Here's what I mean by that. Especially drug-related crimes. I feel very strongly that if someone's just simply hooked on drugs, they need drug treatment. They need to learn a job skill so they can get a job, work hard, be productive, part of society, and pay taxes like all of us. And instead of just simply putting them in jail, spending $25,000, they're not criminals, they're just, drug addicts. And yet we're spending $25,000 a year sending them to the prison system to teach them, to educate them on how to be real criminals. And so I think we need to expand our drug courts and think outside the box a little bit more on drug-related crimes, especially on the first offense or two. And there's other nonviolent crimes. I mean, people go to prison on hot checks. They do. So if they had a job, they lost their job because we're sending them to prison. How are they ever going to make restitution if they're in prison? And once they've been in prison, no one wants to hire them. I mean, I think some people would be better served doing community service and being required to get a GED, get a job skill. They're doing this in El Dorado and Magnolia right now. Robin Carroll, one of the judges down there, has been very involved in it. And basically, statewide, 50% of the people that we turn loose from the prison system end up back in there. The people that are going through what they're calling a smarter sentencing program, where they're basically setting benchmarks, get your GED, learn a job skill, get a job, and if you comply with all this, you don't serve prison time. And the recidivism rate down there for those who have been through this program, instead of 50%, is 7%. Second thing that I think we've got to do is, if we've got a VOTEC school in the prison system, but it's pretty small, I think we need to do a better job of making sure when people get out, they learn a skill while they're there, so they can get a job when they get out. I've got one of my best friends. If he outlives me, he'll be carrying my coffin someday. I could have never served in Congress had he not helped me out with just stuff around the house and owning a family pharmacy in my hometown and all that. He worked for me for many, many years. He's still one of my best friends. And he could not pass a GED. I hired all these different people in these different programs, and he went through them, and he tried, and he tried, and he tried. For 20 years he tried, and he cannot pass the GED. Firestone Building Products in Prescott, I talked to him about this young man, he's my age now, or close, and well, we don't hire people who don't have a GED. And I told him about all the skills and all the things he could do without a GED. They decided to give him a chance. And he has been promoted 4 times, and he'll make $60,000 a year this year. It's been a life-changing experience for him. He's been able to do that without a GED. Our system is so backwards that we won't even let them learn a job skill in prison if they can't pass a GED, which we're setting them up for failure if we do that. So I think we need to look at that. But that's just half of it. I used to own a business. And I'd love to tell you that if I had a job opening and 3 people were sitting in front of me being interviewed, and 2 were model citizens and 1 just got out of prison, I'd like to tell you that I was going to hire the one who got out of prison. I'm not sure I would. And there is a little federal incentive. I think it's like $2,400 a year. But I'm talking about a real incentive. If we're going to spend $25,000 a year incarcerating someone, and when they get out, if they can't get a job, they're going to reoffend because they've got to eat and live, and they're going to end up back in prison. I think the average term's about 7 years on a repeat offense, probably. Is that right, Judge? Is that close? Well, let's just, for the sake of the argument here, say it's 7 years. So $25,000 a year, 7 years, $175,000. I think we ought to be talking about a second chance program where we tell business owners, if you give, someone getting out of prison a chance, we'll give you $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a year for up to 3 years, because we know if they keep that job 3 years, they're not going to chances are, statistically, they're not going to reoffend. So I think, there's a federal program, but it's like $2,400. It really doesn't get anyone's attention, and they don't have a lot of skin in the game because it's not the federal money that's going to pay when they go back to the prison system. It's going to be our money, and so that is part of what I think we need to do. And then finally, we need to make sure that to the last part of your question, we need to make sure on sentencing that people are getting a fair shake and that similar crimes are being sentenced the same way regardless of the color of someone's skin. And I'm committed to working with y'all on how we can. I think there's been some improvements made, but there's still a lot that can be done. And I can tell you, in my administration, I think when people go to prison, the length of that time should never be considered by a judge or a jury decisions shouldn't be made based on the color of their skin. And I'm committed to working with y'all to find ways that we can hopefully continue to improve on that, making sure that similar drugs get similar sentences is part of that, of course, and something that I'm committed to doing as well. Yes, sir.
Just a couple questions. I'd like to know your position on tort reform. I'd also like to know whether or not you can support a school of veterinary at UAPB. And also, how can we direct capital, how would you direct capital to Pine Bluff? Because it seems like it's a dying city.
The capital, veterinary, and the first one was tort reform. I didn't support tort reform when I was in Congress. You know, if it comes up, it's something I'd take a look at. I would listen to all the sides, and I think the Seventh Amendment to the Constitution is very important. And I think when people are wrong, they should be properly taken care of. So but there may be some common sense things that need to be done. If there is, I would listen to all sides and take a look at them, but it's not something I'm running on. I feel strongly about the Seventh Amendment, and if people are able to tinker with that, then they could be tinkering with any of the other amendments as well. And that's how I voted 10 years Senate, 12 years in the Congress. I actually helped get the PhD fishery aquaculture program at UAPB when I was in Congress. And let me just tell you, I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for Pine Bluff, and I'll never forget that. I would have never beat a 4-term Republican incumbent in a race where I was outspent 5-1 had it not been for Pine Bluff. And I never would have served in Congress. I wouldn't be standing here now as a candidate for governor if it wasn't for Pine Bluff. And I think we can do better by Pine Bluff. And I can't wave a magic wand and make wonderful things happen overnight, but it truly is the gateway to the Delta. I think UAPB being there with its rich history and being a historically black college really can help turn that community around, and I'm committed to working with everyone. And I guess what I'm telling you is that you know, I'd love to see a veterinary school in Arkansas if we can afford it. You know, this isn't Washington, money doesn't grow on trees. We have to balance the budget here. We have to live with what we have. You know, I'd love to see a veterinary school in Arkansas. I'd love to see an optometry school in Arkansas and a dental school in Arkansas. And I think Pine Bluff would be a great place for at least one of those three. I understand. And you know, I mean, I'm proud of the work I've done for Pine Bluff. I've made sure that UAPB gets a proper entryway. That's what's going on down there right now. That was an earmark. You know, there's another ad they'd run against me as how was for earmarks. One of those earmarks was to make a five-lane highway from Martha Mitchell out past UAPB. I was proud to do that. The pavilion and farmers market out on the lake, that was one of my projects. And we did a lot of things for UAPB as well as South Ark down there, or Sea Ark down there, and I'm committed to continuing to try and do that. And a lot of this, you know, that's why I go back to education. A lot of it is, I've been doing economic development all my life, and you can have the best roads, you can have the best industrial site, the best infrastructure. Well, guess what? Those are a dime a dozen these days. At the end of the day, before they're going to make an investment in a community, they're going to do a job market, a labor survey, and too many times in towns large and small, there's simply not an educated, trained, skilled workforce available, so the investment doesn't, and the jobs don't come. They go somewhere else. That has more to do with Arkansas losing out than anything else on a lot of these super projects that we've tried to go after in the past. And the pre-K thing, well, that's a long-term strategy. But I'll tell you, in the past, governors want to do something that's immediate so they can take credit for it. This pre-K initiative is not immediate. It's not, you know, it'll be 2 governors removed from me that gets to take credit for it. But that's okay. It's not about credit. It's about really, you know, we've had some wonderful governors, I think, and I think we've had some great leadership, and everybody wants to make Arkansas better, but we still end up 40th something in everything. And to really fix that long term, you can't fix it short term, but fix it long term, I think it starts with education, and it starts with pre-K, and someone else may get all the accolades for it when I'm retired and on a walker or in a wheelchair. I don't know, but that's okay. We got to start somewhere on that. But what can help us short term is really having a renewed emphasis on career and technical training. We put so much emphasis on college. And don't get me wrong, we gotta do better there. We need, you know, it's unacceptable that half the kids going to college are graduating. But short term, one of the things that I think can really make a difference is this career and technical track for those who do not want to go to college, because it can help give us that trained, educated, skilled workforce we need to attract the better paying jobs of today and tomorrow. Look, when I was in Congress, I chaired the Delta Congressional Caucus. I was president of the Mississippi Valley Flood Control Association, served on the Agriculture Committee. I mean, my district director is now the chairman of the DRA, and I think doing as good a job as anyone's ever done in that position. He's trying. And all I know to tell you is that these are some of my ideas on how we can improve the Delta. I'm committed to it, and I understand those troubles. I don't live in the Delta, but I am from Preston, Nevada County, and if you look at all the economic indicators from my home county, and they rival Nevada County, Lafayette County, Stamps, Louisville, and Prescott. Well, I don't know what I'm talking about. They rival economic indicators in the Delta. And I understand that rural Arkansas is hurting, and rural Arkansas needs some help. And I feel very strongly about that. I mean, my opponent says that highway funding should follow the cars, which means all the money's going to Little Rock, Northwest Arkansas. You've got to have a balance, because if you don't have the infrastructure, you're never going to be able to do anything to grow those areas. And so it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. And I'm committed to that. I think that's where government can play a role, is trying to get the chicken and the egg to come together, and those are some of my ideas on how we can do that. But I'm very committed to not only Pine Bluff, but to the Delta region. Is that all of them? I can't think.
A quick question, and depending on your answer, I have a follow-up. I know it's really not a two-part. I was driving down the street one day, and I don't really listen to political ads, they don't influence me, but I heard an ad, it may have been Senator Pryor, I think it's yours, where you were distancing yourself from President Obama, and it wasn't you. Okay. I heard one, and I thought at the time, why would they attend the base?
Yeah.
They can't just assume that African Americans, there'll be some elderly people who won't go out and vote at all.
Right.
Yourself.
The Republican Governors Association has been running a radio ad saying that I'm Obama. And I mean, I call him President Obama, but that's what they say. I'm Obama. And they intended to run it only on white country radio stations around the state. Their ad buyer messed up, and they started running it with this deep white man's voice about Mike Ross's Obama on Power 92. And obviously we didn't call it correctly. So that might have been what you heard. I don't know. I mean, look, now I've had a TV ad that is not intended to distance myself from Obama or Pelosi, but to explain to people I'm independent. And I've been very clear in every speech I've given. I'm proud to be the Democratic nominee for governor, but I'm not running just to be governor for the Democrats or Republicans. I'm running to be governor for all the people of the state. And I pledge to work with anybody that worked with me to try to make this state a better place to call home. But, you know, I was named one of the most independent members of Congress when I was there. I did have an A rating with the NRA. I did vote against Obamacare. You know, I did. And quite frankly, if I was any different on any of those three, I couldn't be running for governor right now in this state, in the situation that we find ourselves in, or if I did, I'd just be spinning my wheels. And I'm trying to save our party. That's why I'm running. And I think I made it real clear where I stand on the private option. And you got to give me a little help here, because a lot of people think I had this huge Democratic district when I was in Congress. My district had the same ranking as Michelle Bachmann's. You see, everybody thought, because I held it 12 years, they thought I had this big Democratic district. It had the same ranking as Michelle Bachmann's, and guess who followed me? Tom Cotton. And so, you know, I had to have a balance while I was there to represent the interests of my district and on some of the things, so I could do what I thought was right on some of the bigger things. But from the private option to the minimum wage to pre-K, those are all three things I'm for. ACE is against. There's huge differences between us, and those are exactly why I'm a Democrat.
Well, women are a big part of the voting population, and what I've noticed is, like, you come in, go this
That's fine. You find we've been trying to find more folks. And if you can find me one, you can tell me which one of those to fire, and I'll swap them out. No, seriously, I hear you. And our campaign staff, I think, actually has more women than men. They're just not. They're with their kids today. They're with their kids today. And we're making a lot of stops today. I've been to Conway, and anyway, the Mosaic deal, and here we got 2 more. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Congressman Ross, for coming. We'll take one more question out there.
Mike, I just wonder, what is the polling showing right now in that governor's race?
Yeah, my pollster actually polls for President Obama. He's one of the best in the country. Everything that we've seen, I mean, we're from 3 down to 3 up. Asa keeps putting out these polls saying he's up 6. I'm down 6 or 8. Last one, I think he said I was down 6. Before that, he said I was down 8. I mean, these are the same outfits that said Eric Cantor was going to win by 35 points, and also the same outfits that said that Mitt Romney was going to be President Obama last year. I have no doubt Asa was probably up about 5 points on me at one point, because in the primary, I didn't have, well, I had one. Well, anyway, I had one, but Curtis Coleman was actually causing him fits. He spent, and we're encouraged by this, the most we ever saw me down was about 5 points, and that was the Republican Governors Association. They spent $1.4 million on TV, seeing how many times they could say Pelosi, Obama, Ross in 30 seconds. Y'all remember that? And then they followed that with Asa spending $700,000 just on feel-good ads. They had that one where his wife was talking. I thought it was an eHarmony ad the first time I saw it. But he just spent $700,000 on these feel-good ads, and I wasn't doing anything in the primary. And and so it's a product of whoever's on TV the most is probably going to be up. I'm on TV now more than he is, so I'm probably up right now. The bottom line is this: if you look at, we were encouraged by this. In half the counties, I was the only thing on the ballot. Me and my opponent. I mean, in half the county, and there were contested races for AG and lieutenant governor and Congress all over the state on the Republican side. We thought there was going to be a much bigger vote on the Republican primary than Democrat. They only voted 25,000 more than we did. So we were encouraged by that, number one. But here's what was even more encouraging: is if you look at the vote Asa got, and you look at the vote I got, and you add them together, it was 260,000 votes, and he beat me by 1,315 votes, which means he got 50.3 and I got 49.7. And that was with 25,000 more votes being cast in the Republican primary than the Democratic primary. So the bottom line is, I've told everybody it's going to be a 50-50 race. I think it comes down to turnout. If we can, if I'm able to get my base out, if I'm able to get my people out, and it's not just that. About 30% of the state's changed a lot. 30% of the people are Democrat, 30% are Republican, 40% are now independent. And the problem we got is they're breaking 2-to-1 right now in favor of the Republican candidate. So I've got to really differentiate myself from Asa, because then I think I can do that with the private option, the minimum wage, and pre-K, among other things. But I've got to really differentiate myself, because basically people in Arkansas are pretty angry, and they're saying that if there's not a difference between the two, I'm going to vote Republican. And one of the reasons I think Pryor's now doing better than Cotton is I think they've done a pretty good job of painting Cotton as the extremist, which I believe he is. And now we're beginning to do that now that these primaries are over, we're beginning to do that with Asa, and I think we'll be successful at doing it, and I think we'll win. But it's going to be a very, very close. This is not the same state that Mike Beebe won in 2006 and 2010.
What are you going to do to get African Americans to turn out?
Yes.
We're working it every day. Every day. We've got, Senator Pryor and I have the Democratic Party, the coordinated campaign. We now have over 100 people on the ground in all 75 counties organizing, and a lot of these are people that were working for President Obama in swing states in 2012, Terry McAuliffe in Virginia in 2013. They're not the ones knocking on the doors. They're the ones that know how to crunch numbers. They know where the precincts are and where the voters are, that we've got to turn out, and then they're organizing local folks to actually go out and be the door knockers. And we're already up to anywhere from, I think last Saturday there were 6,000 doors knocked on in Arkansas just last Saturday, which is unprecedented. We've never done that in June before. And then we'll have, I'm just telling you, we're going to have a combination of what I call old school and new school, meeting one another, and we're gonna have the most aggressive outreach program that I think this state has ever had. And at least I'm committed to it. I know Senator Pryor's committed to it, and Harry Reid's really committed to it. Because Pryor goes down, then we lose control of the Senate, and Reid's out. So I feel good about what we're gonna hopefully be able to do, but I'm doing churches every Sunday. I mean, I'm going 7 days a week. Yesterday I was in Hot Springs, Jacksonville, Fayetteville, and North Little Rock, and that was a pretty light day, actually.
I just follow one thing. What are you gonna do to make sure those who try to vote actually have their votes counted?
Yes.
My mother is 90 years old, my aunt is 95. Both of them have their ballots sent back. They've been voting absentee ballot forever. My mother voted even when there was poll tax. Just recently, this last May 22nd, her vote was rejected on this voter ID stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So even if some of the older African Americans attempt to vote, what are the Democrats going to ensure that they have all those procedures intact, given this voter ID stuff?
I hope that we've got to educate. I hope the primary was a good time for that education process to happen. I'm also hoping that the courts strike this down before the general election. You know, basically the court ruling right now is that it's unconstitutional, but it was stayed until after the primary elections. I'm hoping it gets struck down before the general elections. But you're absolutely right. I mean, in St. Francis County, I believe it was 80% of the absentee ballots were kicked out. And I'm talking. I mean, it is wrong that anyone has their opportunity to vote denied. But it's really offensive that World War II veterans didn't have their votes counted in the May primary, and that would have happened to me because my mom and dad voted absentee. My mom's crippled and they voted absentee, and they sent their photo ID in with their absentee ballot. I mean, for their request for an absentee ballot, and the clerk was good enough to send it back to them with the absentee ballot, saying, no, you don't send it in with the request for an absentee ballot. You actually send it back in with the ballot. I mean, you know, my dad's got a PhD. I mean, it's very complicated for folks. And if it's me personally, people that vote absentee are typically homebound. They don't have transportation, which means they probably don't have a driver's license. I know they go to the county clerk's office and get a photo ID, but how are they going to get to the county clerk's office in Lafayette County or Nevada County or Chico County? And then when they get, you know, even if they have a photo ID, the printer, at least I have at my house, I know some of y'all probably have those printers that have a lid that opens up. I don't have the lid that opens up. I have to push paper through like it, you know, feeds it through a scanner. You ever tried to feed a driver's license through that? You can't do it. So, you know, if I'm homebound, even though I'm relatively sophisticated and I've got a pretty good printer in my house, I cannot make a copy of my photo ID at my house. And that's happening to a lot of folks. And this whole thing, I voted against voter ID laws the whole time I was in Congress. I've said I would have vetoed the voter ID law here like Bibi did. And hopefully the courts will get this thing struck down before November because it's doing exactly what the Republican sponsors of that legislation wanted it to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.